All right, we're doing it.
So we got a fight, and I threw him out of the house.
He said he shot himself, and I was in complete disbelief.
Find something that'll make you smile and laugh every day.
Seeing the mother and father holding the baby.
Enter as strangers.
Welcome to another episode of the Enter as Strangers podcast. This is podcast number 20, the big 2-0.
2-0.
We finally made it. So today on the podcast, we have a special guest that we have in here, which is our grandmother. So we thought it would be cool to have you in, Grandma, and tell us some of your stories. So first off, thanks for coming.
Okay.
I'm interested to know, well, first off, why don't you tell everyone how old you are?
84.
84, okay. And tell us a little bit, I thought it'd be cool because everybody knows, kind of the point of what we do at the podcast sometimes is that the idea that Eric and I had originally was, we know all these people, you have family members and friends, and they have a lot of really interesting stories that you really don't know anything about, or that they have that you know a little bit about, but you don't know the full story. So it's really interesting to get to know things a little bit better. So if you could tell us a little bit about, you know, where you were born and what it was like growing up. You know, I know you were born in Iowa, I believe, right?
Yes.
Okay. So what was it like growing up in Iowa? Like, how many siblings did you have? And
I was born and raised in St. Mary's, Iowa, and I had a brother and two sisters older. My oldest sister, and then there was twins, Tootie and Tim, and then me. And then there was Jerome and Jack and Sherry. So there were seven of us.
7 of you.
Yeah.
Wow.
And growing up, you know, I tell everybody I was born in a vault because my parents bought a bank building whenever during the Depression when it went closed, and they bought the building, and the first ones born there were the twins. And that was an interesting thing. My mom said that because my brother was born was having problem breathing and that, and so, you know, and it was home birth. I mean, that's how it was, and so but it was great. And the bank had a vault, and it had walls that were like 2 foot thick.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Did you? Now all you and your brothers and sisters were born at home.
Except my oldest sister was born in the hospital.
Okay.
Because that's the first one, and my youngest primarily because they didn't. There was too many of us around. They didn't want a home delivery with a bunch of kids around.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
Yeah.
So, but other than that, we were all born at home. Yes.
And so they bought the bank as your primary residence?
That was for the first. Let's see, what was I? Oh, it was after. Must have been about 9, and we switched houses with my grandparents because they had a big 4-bedroom, 2-story old house that was built in 1913.
Wow.
My sister still lives there.
No kidding.
Oh,
Yes.
really?
Yes, and your uncle Jerome, or my brother Jerome, he just bought he owns a bank building, and he just remodeled it because he moved into it. He sold his house to his one of his daughters and moved was a son. I don't know. I don't remember now, but he just moved into it. So,
wow.
Yeah. So
how cool.
Yeah. So we still own.
St. Mary's still a pretty small town.
Very small, because little towns have a way of losing businesses.
Right.
Because when I was growing up, my father owned the hardware store, or my grandfather did, and his brother owned the grocery store. And then at one point, I don't know when my dad acquired the filling station, the gas station. And so, you know, there wasn't many businesses, a couple of bars.
Right.
Of course, bars, German, yeah, you had to have 2 bars. So, I tell everybody I was drinking beer when I was 3.
So when you were growing up, I mean, I would imagine this is, as a little girl, this is post-Depression then,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Did did the Depression have a big effect on a small town like St. Mary's? That you know of?
Yes, of course it did, because, I mean, the wages were poor, and my grandfather run the hardware store. Well, he would sell piece to the farmers. He would sell feed to them and different equipment and stuff that they needed. Well, they didn't have any money to pay for it, so he put it on the books.
Right.
And at the end of when the crops came in and they got some money, they sold their crops, then they would come in to pay off the bill. Well, sometimes they didn't have enough to really do that, so he would reduce the cost on it. So my grandfather never got rich, that's for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like he probably had a sense of how important,
He was the sweetest, kindest man you ever wanted to meet.
Really?
I don't care what child walked into that store, I don't care how dirty they were or anything, he would pick them up and love them.
Really?
Yeah, he
That's
was just,
cool. Wow.
he was really good.
That's cool.
And of course, and my grandmother, she was my go-to. And if I tore my dress or I did something wrong, I'd go to my grandma because she always took care of us. And she was special, very special.
Yeah.
So
how old were you when you left Iowa?
okay, it was let's see, I gotta stop and think. I'm trying to remember when Dennis was born. Isn't that funny? I knew.
Right.
67. Well, it had to be in 60. Okay, Terry was born in 62, so it had to be 1961. No, she was born in 63, and it was 62. 1962, yeah.
So you grew. I mean, you were there well into adulthood.
Yeah.
As far as in Iowa,
I got
obviously.
married, yeah.
Right, and you got married. So, tell us a little bit about. I know there's a lot of details in between and stuff like that, but I'm kind of curious. As I don't think I've ever heard the story of where you met Grandpa.
Okay.
So I'd like to hear that.
Well, Grandpa, of course, I said there was 2 bars in town.
Right.
And so he dated my oldest sister. He dated my next sister, and then in 1950 he went off to Korea, and went and came back. Of course, he's like almost 7 years older than I am.
Oh, okay.
So and all of a sudden I'm dating him.
After he came back from the war?
After he came back, yeah. And at that time, I had just graduated from high school, and that fall I took off and went to nurses training in Des Moines, and you lived in a dormitory because with the nuns,
Right.
and I was dating him, and the next summer, after I went 1 year, finished 1 year of nursing, and the next summer he said he really wanted to get married. Well, the nuns said, you don't go to school, you're not and getting married too. Marriage is a commitment, full commitment.
Right.
And so I quit nursing, and we got married in November of 1952. And Hal came along. No, 1953. See, my time is getting bad. 1953. Hal was born in 1954. Rusty was 55. David was 57. And then we skipped a little bit because 54, 55, 50, 56. David was 56. And Mike had to be 57. And
That's a lot of kids already.
Pat was 59.
Right.
And then Dennis came along in 61.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, there was 10, and then Terry came along in 64. 'Cause
Right.
There's 10 years between Hal and Terry.
Yeah.
And another 10 years between Terry, and Bill.
Right. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So for those of you keeping score, basically what Grandma's getting at there is she had 10 kids,
Yeah.
8 boys and 2 girls.
Yes.
So
That's insane. What are
That's
you
a
doing
lot
having
of-
8 kids?
Yeah.
Or 10 kids?
did you always want a big family?
Well, yeah.
I mean, you came from a pretty big family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so,
But, you know, it was the happiest time I can remember. It was great. Number one, our first few years, for the first 5 boys, we lived on Spence's family farm. Mm-hmm. And the front yard was probably an acre of
Wow.
grass, really nice. And they had room. We had garden and fruit trees and everything, and it was great. I mean, and then we moved to another place, which was okay. It was a farmhouse, and that's where. That's where some. I know. Grandpa came home with the Asian flu. You probably don't even know what Asian flu is, but it was at that time one of the flus and it was very bad.
right.
Well, all 4 of the older boys got the flu,
Oh.
except my youngest one, Pat. He didn't get the flu. Because he was a baby, and I was feeding him.
Oh,
So
right.
yeah,
Right. So he was getting.
And I didn't get the flu.
Oh, right. Makes
just-
sense.
I don't get sick.
Well, hey.
That's a good quality to have for
Yeah.
sure. So you always wanted to have a big family, 10 kids, 8 boys and 2 girls.
Yes.
And let's see, you first of all, you decided to move from Iowa.
Yes.
Were they all born in Iowa?
Just the first 6.
The first
Okay.
6. So 6 kids deep, and you decide you're going to move to Arizona.
Yeah, and it was all 6. It was 6 boys.
6 boys.
Yeah.
Why did you guys decide to move?
Because your granddad, his truck slid on the icy road and hit a snowbank and bent the door of his car, and he says he was tired of the snow and fighting it. And he had a friend that was in Kingman, Arizona, and said, "Oh, I got a job out here if you want it." So we drove out, just he and I drove out and checked out. The job was okay, but the Kingman, Arizona at that time,
Yeah.
there wasn't a good house in the place.
Right.
I mean, so we were driving back, coming back home, and going along. Well, it would be I can't remember what highway that is, 40, something like that. And coming back and seeing the sign, Prescott. And it was, wasn't very far away.
Right.
So he said, "Let's go down there." And we drove through the town. There was a heating and air conditioning business there that we drove past. And just driving around, just fell in love with the town.
Yeah.
And so he says, "That's where we're going." And so we went home, sold our house, packed the kids up. Now that was a trip.
Not bad.
6 boys traveling
Yeah.
from Iowa to Arizona.
Yeah, because our vehicle was, we had an Econoline pickup, if you know
Right.
what an Econoline
Yeah,
is.
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so the 2 oldest boys rode up front with their dad, and I rode in the camper shell in the back with 4 little kids.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and we had a couple of cots for them to sleep on.
Yeah.
That was so we'd cut down some army bunks,
Right.
And they fit across the thing so they could went on the floor and then went up on the edge of the.
Wow.
What a hell of a road trip that'd be, huh?
Yeah.
But come behind us was my mom and dad driving our 1937 Nash.
Oh wow.
Okay.
Yeah, and pulling a trailer with what belongings we took with us.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Was it for you being a mother of 6 and growing up in the same place, and obviously Grandpa did too? Were you hesitant to move at all? Were you excited? Were you scared?
I was a little worried, but no, it was fine because I sort of go along with things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And when we got out there, we had planned on camping up into one of the parks up there, but we decided we wasn't going to get up the hill to it with the car and the trailer. So we pulled into a little city park that was out next to a lake, and camped there for almost 2 months. Yeah.
Right. So hold on. That's because that's a story I've always heard. Right.
Okay.
Is that when you guys moved there, you basically lived in a tent. I always heard it was while Grandpa was building the house.
No.
And it was just till you found somewhere.
Till we found someplace, yeah.
So you basically camped out with 6 boys for 2 months. 2 months. I don't think people realize that's a long time to basically camp. And was Grandpa working during those 2 months?
Oh yeah, we got there on the weekend, a Memorial Day weekend,
Right.
basically, and he had a job by Wednesday.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, he was good. He was a jack of all trades.
Right.
He knew his stuff.
Yeah.
So it wasn't hard to get a job.
You know what's really funny about this is that story about you guys driving out to Kingman and then hitting Prescott, right? And then Grandpa finding work pretty quick is real similar to when we left Arizona to California because Mom and Dad went to Vegas looking there and happened to go back through California and hit Lodi. And the story goes, Mom fell in love with the place, and Dad was able to find work pretty quick too. So it's a lot of similars, but that's really cool. I didn't know that, the idea that, because I think most of us of a certain age, maybe not Eric, but growing up, when you're little in Prescott, mountains are right there. It's your backyard. You spend all that time out there. It's what gave us the love of being outdoors. So Prescott has that kind of special home feel right to it. And going back there and realizing, oh, that place is a total mountain town. You don't think of it when you're little.
No.
But when I came back as an adult, I'm like, oh, it's a mountain town. It's like a park city. It's right in the mountains.
Yes.
But it's just kind of cool to think how big the family that you brought to Prescott was, and the idea that, I mean, we still have family there, and Mom and Dad have friends there and stuff, but the roots set there just by taking the chance to turn off the road and go there.
Yeah.
Which I guess is the story if you go to any town you fall in love with, but it's just kind of a cool story.
Well, I imagine back in those days, Prescott, I mean, it still wasn't a huge place. I imagine it wasn't.
No, it wasn't huge, no.
Very big.
But it's grown a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, when we first moved, of course, looking for a house, finding a place to rent was a little difficult to find, and we finally found it. It was a 2-bedroom cabin. Oh, 6 boys.
Wow.
2-bedroom cabin with a kitchen so small that once I had one of those folding tables. The one's about 18 inches wide,
Right.
And I couldn't get, once they sat down to eat, I couldn't get through the kitchen.
Oh, boy.
And then just the older boys would sit there, and the 3 littlest ones would sit at a little kids' with their little chairs. And basically, I didn't sit down.
Well, I imagine having 6 boys at that point, you weren't sitting down anyways, even if you could.
Yeah, for sure. So how long was it? How long when you got to Arizona and you got the first rental house you got till the point that you started building the house?
Well, we moved out because Grandpa kept looking for a bigger place to rent because that was really tiny.
Right.
And so he found this one. He says, "Come on, I'll have to show you." He went out to see it first, but it was on a children's ranch, and there was a children's camp. And it was the old ranch house, but they had added on to it. They'd added a nice big room off the back, and two bathrooms, not just bathrooms, but they were like two stools, 2 showers, and in it. So I mean, it was a great place to be.
Right. So was this the hen house?
No.
So that's not the same place. Okay.
Well, now you say the hen house. I call it the Wrangler's Roost.
The Wrangler's Roost. I just remember it as the hen house. I don't know why.
Yeah.
But okay, because I know. I mean, I was around when you lived there.
Yes.
I just don't know if that was the same place that maybe you moved to originally.
No.
So the place he's showing you, is it anywhere near where
Yes, it was on the ranch itself.
Okay, so it was on the ranch.
They used it during the summer, so we were just there. We were going to stay the winter. Well, somebody comes along and wants to rent the ranch for a bit, so they said, okay, well, we'll move you. You can move over to the the other house, the Wrangler's Roost, which
Right.
the hen house.
Right.
And so we moved over there, and it must have been in the spring that we started building, because he had to wait till he could had to dig it out and stuff. Whoops.
You're okay. No worries.
And dig it out and get the floor down first.
Right.
Now, see, he did hire a man to put the floor down, because he knew he couldn't do that. He wasn't skilled enough. He had never done it. But the thing is, your grandpa was a little mad at the colored people, because on his way home from Korea, one would get at the front of the line, of the dinner line, and let all the others in. And so he actually lost over 20 pounds coming home from Korea on the ship. Yeah.
Wow.
And so he was pretty disgusted with them.
Right.
But the guy who laid the floor, he says he works hard. He had raised his own family. He was raising his grandchildren, and I mean, he was a hard worker and very good.
Right.
So he had him lay the floor, and he just, he admired that man because of his skill and his hard work. And so but he laid all the blocks. They were the big blocks, cement blocks. And the house was 40 feet by 60 feet. Mm-hmm. It was less than a quarter of an inch plumb.
Wow. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. And so we got that all up and got the walls in and stuff, and moved in before we really had a kitchen. We hadn't built the kitchen yet.
Right.
So he had to finish the kitchen. So for a while I washed dishes in the bathroom sink. It was a good time though.
Yeah.
Yeah. But and then one year, I'm trying to remember, it wasn't too long, and we had a rain, and water came in and leaked. He says, "Okay, we got to put the top story on." He hadn't planned. He figured we could wait till a little while longer to put the top story on, so he built the top story on it. Yeah.
Right.
So
and this was this was a house that was technically never finished.
But technically,
I mean, there were parts that you didn't.
Well, where his workshop was supposed to be the master bedroom.
Right.
Never got finished.
Yeah.
And it was supposed to have a bathroom. And and a bathroom in there, but it never got done.
Right.
So.
But what's cool? I mean, you don't remember.
No, I was too young.
But Grandma's house was the coolest place to go to in the world. And I remember being a little kid. I have no idea how old I was. This might be one of my youngest memories. We were at the pool, which was good times all around.
Yes.
Always.
Yes.
And you were holding me, and you said, "Do you want to come stay at Grandma's?" And I said, "Yes, for this many days," right? 10 days. I had both my hands up for this many days. And I'm pretty sure that I did. I went and stayed for forever. So Grandma's house was a blast, obviously. It was mountains everywhere.
Yeah.
The front yard, all the property. You could go play and do anything. So obviously that place has a real special, place in my heart. You missed out.
Yeah, I mean, I think I have like 3 solid memories of living there.
Or of going there?
Of living.
Living in Arizona?
Yeah. One was, I remember the pool. I remember the red fence around it. Wasn't it red with the
fence.
long fish net or the long net hanging up on it and having little colored boogie boards?
Yeah.
I had been pretty young then.
You had to be really young.
Obviously, Annette and John's wedding. Because that was the ring bearer.
Okay.
I remember that.
You don't remember the pool at the ranch then, because that wasn't the pool at the ranch, I don't think.
Was it not? Maybe I'm wrong too, because it had a wood fence around it.
Yeah.
Because it had that old gate that you would open it to go into.
Right.
Yep.
That's right, yeah.
So, and what's your third one?
The last one, and this could be not a memory, it could be a story I've been telling, but I remember you guys having snapdragons, I think, out from the house. The flowers that little snapdragon flowers.
Yes.
Snapdragon
And I
flowers.
used to love pulling those and squeezing them and making the mouths move. That's what I remember about
Now,
Grandma's house.
do you remember the hummingbirds?
I do.
Can't say I do.
Yeah.
That was a sugar plum tree in front of your house, right outside the
Yeah,
sliding door.
yeah,
See, I knew those were sugar plums. I mean, that tree was everything. It was a spaceship. It was a high rise. It was everything, anything you wanted it to be. But I used to get sick off of eating the sugar plums out of that thing, and just to this day love plums.
Yeah.
Love plums. But so here's what's cool about that. I mean, for me as a kid, that was a big house.
Oh, yeah.
Bunch of rooms, upstairs, downstairs, all kinds of nooks and crannies. I can't tell you how many hours we spent under the stairs playing,
Oh, yes.
like it was a submarine or an
Yes,
airplane.
yeah.
But what's kind of neat is, and I've seen pictures of this, but Grandpa had the boys, his sons, our dad specifically, working really young.
Oh, yes.
I mean, I think Dad says that he started going to work at 11 with Grandpa.
Yeah.
And so, and most of our uncles are skilled tradesmen in one form or fashion or the other. Some of them, as they got older, transition to other things, but all good with their hands, all good with their. I remember you told me once when you moved here to Utah and I was staying with you, you said that your boys always had a really good talent, and I can attest to this with Bill because he's a savant at this, at seeing things in their head and being able to create and build those things. Just by picturing it.
Yeah.
So I've always appreciated that because, you definitely see it with Bill.
Yeah.
So now you're home. This is your home.
Yes.
You've built this up.
How many years between camping and home?
Between camping and home, wow. Billy was born. Isn't that funny?
Was Bill born while you lived in the house? I mean, were you guys born after Grandpa was done building the house, or was he born before
Bill was
that?
born before we moved.
Okay.
Then Terry and Annette. Terry was born when we were Now, we might have been in the Wrangler's Roost at that time.
At that time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And Annette was... She was the first one born when we lived in our own house.
Right.
Oh,
right. So, I wanted to ask you a couple questions because, like I said, growing up, going to Grandma's house was my favorite thing to do, period, as a kid, right? But Grandpa was kind of scary at that time.
Yes.
He was, he used to come down the stairs and he'd grab me by the top of my head, my hair. He'd pull my hair a little bit and he'd say things like, "What are you doing here again?" In jest and stuff like that. But he was always a little scary to me. And when you heard those boots coming down those stairs, you were like scattered like cockroaches, So I would like to know, because I got a small little insight once right before we left Arizona, and I don't remember what the place was called, but that old restaurant that was a red building in town off the main road. I'm horrible. I don't remember any of that. It was like I know that I went there one time with Bill and Spencer and Grandpa. Yeah. And anyway, I just remember how many people... there was a bunch of old timers in there, and how many people knew him.
Oh, yeah.
And it surprised me as a little kid because, here is my grandpa, but he's a scary guy that kind of keeps to himself, and then all these people, and he's chatting them up and stuff like that. And I'm like, who's this guy that I'm here with? So was he pretty well known? Obviously you guys were there forever.
Oh, yeah. Because you stop to think. He did furnace work, so between his work, he also belonged to the Civil Air Patrol, but then also he was with the Sheriff's Search and Rescue, because we had a CB radio. We went out with the CB radio.
Right.
Mm-hmm. When we went out there, and the CB radio was your contact at that time, and so he started the CB radio and helped with search and rescue.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew he was in the Civil Air Patrol.
Yeah.
But I did not know that he was...
Yeah.
So, would you say that... Because you knew Grandpa before he went to the Korean War?
Yes,
Barely.
barely.
Or
Yeah,
just a
I
little-
knew him. I knew who he was. I
Right.
knew. Well, I was over drinking beer, and
Right, right. Yeah. So, do you think, I mean, because to serve in a war like the Korean War and then to be part of the Civil Air Patrol and search, was he fairly civic minded?
Oh, yeah.
Did he have a real pride in community and
Yes,
country
yeah,
and stuff like that?
although when he graduated from high school, in let's see, when was it? Just before the end of the war. It was 1944 or something like
Right.
that. Okay, he went in to take his physical, and he didn't pass because he's flat-footed.
Oh, wow.
So it comes a few years later. He's in his 20s
Right,
and passed right now. They didn't care how flat-footed he was.
right, right.
But when he went over to Korea, there was several other guys that he knew that he went over with. Well, they lined him up and went down the line of alphabetically, who has a high school diploma. Now, he didn't want to go to high school, but his mom and dad made him.
Right.
Okay, get all the way to the S's for a high school diploma. Okay, they're going to send him back to help in the post office, the frontline post office. Well, he gets back there and they discover he'd taken typing in high school because it was something fun.
Right,
He liked,
right.
and he was ambidextrous, so he was a really fast, good typist.
Wow.
Really?
Huh.
Yeah. So they kept him back. He was back there most of the time unless they really needed,
Right.
that. So I don't think one of the guys he went over with came back. I think he was the only
He was
one.
the only one.
Wow.
So let me ask you this, and maybe you know, maybe you don't know. In hindsight, do you think? I mean, it sounds like he wasn't maybe seeing a lot of combat,
No.
but obviously
enough.
Okay. Do you think that he had? I mean, I know Grandpa suffered from some vices and things like that, and we can talk about that in just a little bit. But you think the war that like a lot of that generation was suffering from some form of PTSD?
To some of, yes, some
Yeah.
of it, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Of course, he had vices before he went in.
Sure, of course. Well, I'm just wondering if because if war changes people, seeing combat changes
yeah.
people a lot, and
Yeah.
it's but it's kind of interesting that he stayed in the Civil Air Patrol and things like that, and stayed pretty civic minded.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's kind of neat. These are things that you grow up hearing little stories. I've heard the flat-footed story before,
Yeah.
and what's kind of neat about that story you just told is back then, to the question of who has a high school diploma seems silly now, but back then you mostly went to work.
Yeah.
After junior high or that age.
Yep.
And high school was not something that everybody did.
Especially farm kids.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Time to work the farm.
And that his parents, his dad, they had a farm way back, and this and his dad used to they buy cattle and sell them for more, he'd buy things, and that's what he did until he bought he had a hardware store in New Virginia. So he grew up, his dad owned the hardware store there.
Oh wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
that's a neat
Yeah.
coincidence.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm wondering, and not to jump too far around, but you had dropped out of nursing school when you guys decided to get married.
Yes.
When did you go back?
I went back. I tell everybody I spent 30 years raising kids, my own and everybody else's. And then I went back to school. Whenever Billy was 10 years old, I went back to school. I was like 50 years old at that time.
Wow.
And I worked my way through because I worked at nights and went to school in the daytime. It took me a while, but
Yeah.
I got through, and that's all that counted.
That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Which is a really cool thing to be in your 50s,
Yes.
right? And then go get your nursing degree.
Yes.
And I remember I was at the graduation.
Yes.
At Yavapai College.
Yes.
Yeah, so I remember that.
I remember just seeing the pictures of it.
Okay, let me ask you this, because this is a story I think I've had the discussion with my mom about, but did you not get your driver's license until
I was 39.
39?
Yeah.
Holy.
Yeah.
Okay, 39. I had a memory. It's probably a story someone told me, but I had a memory that I was around when you were getting your license, but
Yeah.
I don't think I would have been born by then.
No.
But that's pretty interesting. So you didn't.
Because see, I was 40 when Bill was born.
Okay, so I definitely wasn't around.
Yeah.
So didn't get your license till you were 39.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't go back to work until you were in your 50s.
Mm-hmm.
Was that something that you just always wanted to get back to? Was nursing?
Oh yeah, I wanted to be a nurse when I was 6.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, see, my aunt was a nurse, and my uncle was a doctor.
Oh, okay.
So that was nursing. Even before I knew my uncle was a doctor, I think I always wanted to be a nurse. It was just one of those things.
That's
So you put your nursing life on hold for 30 years while you
Well-
raised a family, and
Well, I knew that if I didn't marry him then, he would go and find somebody else because he was that age. I mean, he
Yeah.
was in his late 20s by that time.
Yeah.
He was ready for marriage.
Yeah.
And so I figured if I wanted him, I had to marry him now. And it's the best thing I did.
Oh, that's
there
awesome.
you go.
I wouldn't take anybody else.
See, I just don't know that our kids' generation
No.
are going to grow up and you're ever going to hear a story like that.
Never.
You know, the first thing I was asked when I moved up here was, are you going to remarry? And I looked him square in the eye and I says, no, I had the one I wanted. That's enough.
That's awesome.
So when did you decide to move to Utah, and what brought you here?
Okay. Grandpa died in 1990, January 1990. And Terry was up here alone with 3 little kids working total support.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided that she needed my help.
Right.
And the only one that was still at home was Bill.
Yeah.
Because he was still in high school.
Yep.
And so we moved up here.
You brought him up kicking and screaming.
Oh, you know what? He didn't say too much. It wasn't too bad.
That's good.
Yeah.
So Eric kind of fast forwarded there quite a bit. We always tell people on the podcast, and obviously you're a grandmother, so the rules are a little bit different. But I'd like to find out, if you're willing to share, what it was like. You lost your oldest son when he was 12. Is that accurate? Was he 12?
Well, he was in middle school, so he must have been
Somewhere in there.
in there.
In
Yeah.
that range.
Yeah.
With
It was
him being
1967.
67.
So, yeah.
So with him being your oldest son, and this is Hal.
Yes.
And what was that like for you, having that many kids at the time? And I mean, obviously, it's really I can't even imagine how hard it is to lose, a child. But I actually don't know a lot about him. Tell us a little bit about his personality and stuff like that.
Hal was what you might call the perfect child.
Oh wow.
Yeah. I mean, he was very smart.
Mm-hmm.
He potty trained himself basically before he was 2.
Wow.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, and I mean, he was a very smart kid, but very, very kind and thoughtful, and all of the things that you want a child to be, and always well behaved. Just one of those. That was him. It was funny though. He had 2 calics here and 2 calics there, so I always had to give him short haircuts because
Couldn't do nothing else with it.
Yeah.
yeah.
So he was a smart kid. He was
Yes.
I mean, how much trouble does a 11 or 12-year-old get into? But not really a troublemaker at all.
No.
Wow.
No.
That's really
Not at
cool.
all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was he, because I know, obviously, because I was just a kid, but the grandpa I knew is probably different than, at that stage than he was earlier in life. Was he, I would make the assumption just because I barely saw, family or dinner at grandma's, there he was. You ate everything on your plate.
Yes.
scarily. And the guy that would come home in his truck and go upstairs, and you wouldn't see him for the rest of the day. And was he close with the older boys and stuff like that?
Oh yeah, of course. Now you got to realize that they worked with him, and when he was home, when we were building the house, it was. Well, I'd go with him because the littler ones had to go too. But we sifted all the sand and stuff that could use and get all the rocks, carried the rocks out, and this and that. And whenever we had laid the PVC pipe from the well to the house. Well, PVC pipe under rocks don't work well. So the two boys, he and Rusty, your dad, dug the ditch, 3-foot deep ditch, foot wide, all the way from the well down the road and to our house by hand.
Holy smokes!
Yes, yeah,
And they
were
young.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that tells you that tells you what's interesting about that to me is that obviously speaks directly to the work ethic that we see in our dad. I mean, the work ethic is
Yes.
beyond reproach, and obviously it had probably a lot to do with that.
Yes, yeah, because his dad was that too.
Right.
I mean, you did your work and you didn't.
Right.
Yeah.
You just got things done.
Yes.
That's how you do it.
Yeah.
So I keep asking all the questions, Eric, because I have all these memories. So
Well, I mean, yeah, you would being older.
yeah.
I'm just sitting here. You said Grandpa died in 1990, or 1990.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was 8 years old. Now, my memory, I was younger. So at that point, I was 7, 8 years old, and I don't remember anything about Grandpa.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'd have been too young because we were in California
Yeah.
at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this in relation to that. So Grandpa committed suicide.
Yes.
And we had Mom on here a few weeks back talking about her dad. So we're unique in the way that both our grandfathers took their own lives, and we've talked about it before, how we're the only people we know that's had that happen.
Okay.
And I remember when Dad sat us down, we were in California, I was in 7th grade, and he sat us down, took us into his room, the 4 of us, and told us, he said, this is how he said it, Dad. He said, we got some news from back home. He said, you're running out of grandpas. That's kind of how he broke it to us, which, was hard. I think it was hard for him to tell us, and then it kind of sunk in there. But I know Grandpa suffered from some depression.
Well, it wasn't so much depression as he had surgery.
Oh, that's right.
And it was gallbladder surgery.
Right.
And when they did that, they didn't find stones. All that came out was black. But when I had asked the doctors, they wouldn't tell me anything.
Uh-huh.
Well, I know him. I knew him well enough. He had told them not to. Because I could almost bet that he had cancer, because he came home from the hospital with 2 tubes with drains. He wouldn't even let me empty those. He had emptied them. The only thing he let me do was he let me give him an enema, because he couldn't do it.
Right.
And he needed it.
Right.
But then he went back to work. As soon as they removed those tubes, he was back to work, and he got to the point where he could hardly walk across the floor. And, he was so weak and everything that I know, and his idea, and plus the fact, he would sit and look at the newspaper and go through the want ads.
Mm-hmm.
And he'd say, well, here's a job at this place. Here's a job at this place. Because I had just passed my boards. So I was starting to work.
Mm-hmm.
And he would go by and check all these, what I could make, how much, whether I could support myself.
Mm-hmm.
And he kept checking them. And then the night that he took his life was, I had gone off to work, and Spencer and Bill were still at home.
Right.
And so they came home. I came home, and they said, "I don't know where Grandpa is. He's not here." And he took his old truck, because he had gotten a newer truck for work.
Mm-hmm.
and he had the old Econoline pickup.
Yeah.
And still, he took it. And my first thought, I called the sheriff's office, and they were flying over the mountains looking, because I thought had driven off the mountains.
Right.
Which wouldn't, that was, but couldn't find him. And then your dad, somebody called. We called your dad, and was it your dad or Diane or somebody had a dream that he was under something and couldn't be seen, and your dad told him to go look down in the garage at the where the house that across from where the
Reaches home.
Reaches
Or their
home.
property,
and
right.
look in the garage, and that's where he'd parked his car and turned it on, and had taken a cot down there, was laid on the cot, and
It was a few days before he was found, right?
yeah, it wasn't too long though, but
Right.
A
Couple days or whatever.
Yeah, because that dream, I just sort of opened it up.
Yeah. Wow.
Whoa.
So, yeah.
I knew none of this.
Oh, you
basically,
did?
other than
Right.
carbon
Yeah.
monoxide poisoning part of it
Yeah.
in the garage. But
Yeah.
It's interesting because that's why we wanted to have you in here, is to hear stories like this firsthand, because it's easy for kids to have their versions of the stories and things get lost and stuff over the years. But so he was helping you. Did you know what he was doing when he was helping you look for work and find the want ads?
I didn't know that was happening, but
Right.
he was, but I could tell that he was worried about, because he had gotten
sick.
He could hardly walk across the floor,
Yeah.
and yet he was still working. But
Right.
It was,
And this was
how long was it between when you started that new job and then Grandpa took his life?
Well,
Do you recall?
basically, I worked from the time I was working before I had my license, just and then so it was only a few months. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And she worked nights.
And I worked nights.
Yeah. Yeah.
I always
That's
worked nights.
That's when we got in trouble. It was at night in the big house late at night.
Yeah.
So, in your opinion, I guess what I'm kind of gathering here is that this was just his way of going out on his terms.
Yes. Yes.
Much like our other grandfather.
Right.
Yes.
Exactly.
Which speaks to that generation.
Yes.
Yep.
Well, and they both had this idea as protect the family. I mean,
Right.
that was their idea of protecting their family.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I'm enamored with the story right now because, like I said, I knew none of it really, other than how he passed. But the idea, of him going through that newspaper and making sure you're okay and the family's okay it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. It's definitely. I can't imagine. We kind of went over it a little bit, but if we can back up for a minute and you can maybe tell us. I mean, I can't even imagine, but were there any? How hard was it losing a son? I mean, the worst feeling in the world. Did you have a support system around you?
Well, it wasn't just losing a son. I had a son who was hurting for it too, because he was blaming himself,
Right. Yeah.
and so I had to protect him.
Yeah. Because there was an accident with a firearm.
Yeah.
And Hal was hurt and whatnot. And so,
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that must have been tough for you to have to grieve the loss of a son, but also,
Yes,
you have another son here.
And not make him feel like he's to blame.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that must have been really tough.
Yeah.
Were Dad and Hal real close?
Yeah. Very. He was close with all his boys, though.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think back, how many men would have accepted that many children and said, okay.
Yeah.
And yet, he seemed to think it was, I never had him say, what again?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. He never complained
Right.
about it. So it just makes a big difference.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Did it I obviously so many kids, different ages. Was the impact of losing their oldest brother rough on? I mean, I imagine it had to be rough on the whole family.
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
And you guys were already in the house at this point,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
In the home that you'd built.
Yeah.
Whew, that's rough.
Yeah.
That's definitely rough. And Grandpa's gravesite is right next to.
It's actually on top because he was cremated.
Oh, okay.
So I've got my spaces to there too. So
Oh, do you?
Yeah, I get to be cremated.
Oh, right on. Okay, yeah. That's the way I'm going. So.
Yeah, I'm with you.
So, go ahead.
But I think I'm going to donate my body to the University of Utah first.
There you go.
For
science?
For science.
I like it. Take what you need.
Yeah.
Burn the rest.
Yeah.
I forgot. I can't believe I forgot this, but you kind of mentioned it in passing. You babysat for people.
Oh, yes.
In your home.
Yes.
How long did you do that?
17 years.
Holy.
17 years. Because I remember interacting with these other kids and stuff. Yeah.
How many kids did you watch typically?
Anywhere from 8 to 12.
What? 8 to 12? Along with your own kids?
Yeah, well, the first one, I had my first one before Annette was born, and that was a neighbor's child.
Right.
And so then, and they just kept coming. Because then the other neighbor had some, and then, I had 1, 2, 3 doctors, a couple of lawyers, a couple of teachers, and a nurse, and then there was a few odds and ends in there, but most of them were professional people.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But I had the perfect setup. I had a huge play yard.
Yeah.
I had a huge playroom.
The playroom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you couldn't have asked for a better playroom.
No.
And then it went right outside to where they could go play. There was no fences.
Yeah.
Nothing was fenced in. They had the swings and the sandbox and everything that kids needed. Mm-hmm. Tricycles and wagons and the whole bit. So,
yeah. That's crazy. I remember you babysitting kids, but I had no idea that the numbers were that high or that you did it for that long.
Yeah.
Wow. Now, is that something that you just kind of fell into, or? I mean, obviously you had so many kids of your own.
Well, it started, the first one was a neighbor's little girl, and she had 2 older daughters, but they were both older and in school and everything, and she was a music teacher, and she wanted to go back to teaching.
Right.
And so after that, the little girl was born in, was it March? Yeah, I think it was March. And so that fall she wanted to go back, so I took the baby and kept her.
Right.
And that was just before Annette was born.
Right.
So, yeah.
That's nuts.
That is crazy.
I keep bumping into everything tonight.
So you didn't have enough of kids after having 10 of your own that you needed 12 more.
You know what? I've worked NICU for the last 18 years from two.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So
you love children.
Wow.
Babies are my business.
Babies are your business. Yeah, I like it. And you're still nursing.
Not really. I retired last July.
Oh, see, I didn't even know. But still, even until last July.
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive.
But I'm still got my license. My license runs until January 1st. So next week, the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth, I'm going to go give flu shots.
Oh, nice.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So, tell us a little bit about. I have a question. So, I know
Doesn't
that
sound promising.
No. I know that people called Grandpa Spence or Spencer.
Yeah.
I know you would call him that.
Yeah.
Spence. So, is that why we have an uncle named Spencer Spencer? Is because
he became his seventh son. He asked to be named Spencer.
The seventh son.
Because all his friends called him Spencer. Nobody called him Harold.
Right.
Yeah.
They just so Grandpa's friends called him Spencer. Spencer. And so, seventh son of a seventh son makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, or not, I mean, seventh son. So, Spencer. Because we used to think, it's the greatest thing. People still don't believe you when you tell them, I got an uncle with 2 first names. You know, Spencer.
It's a great icebreaker.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, when he was little, I thought, well, we'll just nickname him Jimmy because it's Spencer James.
Right.
They took the James out of the Harold James, and
Mm-hmm.
so I call him Jimmy. He would not answer to that.
Oh, really?
Way.
Really?
He would not pay any attention to me at all. And then when he went to school, first he goes up and they rode the bus.
Right.
So gets up and gets on the bus, and the bus driver says, "Oh, hello, and who are you?" He says, "Spencer." He says, "Yeah, I know you're Spencer, but what's your first name?" "Spencer."
And then from then on, every time a teacher asked him his name,
Yep.
it was Spencer.
He's been dealing
Spencer.
with that his whole life.
Yeah.
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 Except in school, he called himself Spencer Squared.
Spencer squared. That speaks to Spencer a little bit of a nerd sometimes. No, just kidding. So the reason you're up here is because you just got back from going to the skydive place and talking to them because you're going skydiving.
Yes.
Yeah, what'd they say? We good?
Yeah.
We can book it now?
I have to get a doctor's approval, permission first.
Okay.
Right.
So I'm just going to go to my doctor and say, "Hey, I want to go skydiving. Will you sign this?"
Yeah, you got some connections.
And he's going to sign it.
Oh, I hope so.
80.
Thing is, I've got a brand new doctor because the doctor I went to the last few years was with the senior I don't know what they call was at St. Mark's, and she.
Enough
So
said.
I changed doctors to this. So
So
like a new insurance, I got a different doctor.
Are you excited?
yeah.
Oh yes. Oh, can't hardly wait.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Now, have you been before?
No.
No.
Never.
No, I wanted to do it on my 80th birthday, but I just didn't have the time or the money.
So people that are listening,
This is going to be awesome.
yeah,
Just so you know.
because you're going
Oh, yeah.
with her.
call.
Our 84-year-old grandmother is going skydiving. So get off your butt and go do something because that's putting everybody to shame.
Yeah.
That'll be a blast.
Oh, it's going to be fun.
That'll be a blast. I know a lot of people are planning on coming up and watching
Yeah.
it land and stuff.
Yeah.
So, whew, that's a little scary,
It's
man.
going to be great. That'll be great.
That'll be really neat.
Now I can call him tomorrow and make the book it.
No,
finally.
You gotta wait for the
have to
doctor's note.
You have to wait for the doctor's note.
He's going to say yes.
Yeah.
He's going to say yes.
Yeah.
So, Grandma, so every couple years we've to me it's a fairly new tradition. I've been going on for a while, but every couple of years we have a big family reunion with your side of the family, you being the matriarch. Off the top of your head, do you know how many grandkids and great grandkids
Well,
you have?
I have 25 grandchildren.
Okay.
That I know. The great grandchildren, I'm thinking, because Sean is not here yet.
on the way.
We're having a baby shower this weekend, or the 29th.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not this week, next weekend, and I think it's 28. I've got to write them all down again.
28 great grandchildren.
Great
Yes.
grandchildren.
But that's nothing. Do you know that my father and mother had 45 grandchildren,
Well, that's because they're having like 8 and 10 kids back in those days.
but then their 100th great grandchild was born the day my father died.
No kidding.
100 great grandchildren.
Holy crap.
That's one family in a few generations.
Well, see, hopefully you're going back next summer when the
Right.
Lipples.
So they're doing that. I heard that.
And we're planning on. I don't know how many's going to come. I'm trying to get all of you guys to go.
Yeah, I'd like to go for sure. I remember the last one that was there. I mean, it was huge then.
We need to rent a bus.
Yeah, rent a bus, just a big coach line bus
No
and get
kidding.
out there.
Wow.
So I'm kind of curious from your standpoint because this is the thing about this is the thing about grandma, that if anyone asked me to tell me about my grandma, that I would
Yep.
tell them, right? I'd always say this. I'd say grandma's one of the most charitable people I know, always giving for others. It's put up countless hooligans in your home, myself included, for years and years and years. Bill's friends, cousins, nephews of mine, obviously grandkids of yours and great grandkids probably, or maybe soon to be. But so I always described you as someone who's very, very giving and caring, and also you kind of don't take any bullshit. So when grandma drives, or used to be, when I drove back with grandma after graduation when I moved to Utah, and I always loved driving with grandma because she has never driven like an old lady. So
Nope.
to your credit, you've never driven like an old lady.
She's a badass behind the wheel.
That's right. That's right. So I'm curious from your perspective, because getting older and going, the last family reunion we had in Steamboat and stuff, and you see all these, we do the pictures, and just, it's a never ending sea of a lot of people who look almost identical, we look just like our cousin, not Eric, because he's the milkman's kid, but you got Everett and his kids, and everybody looks the same. All the men look the same, and a lot of the women do too. But when you kind of step back and look at that, is it gratifying to kind of see a lineage behind you of so many different kids? I just wonder what it's like.
For sure. I agree.
To be the matriarch or a patriarch of such a large family, because our family is a lot larger than a lot of families.
I never give it too much thought. Everyone is an individual,
Right.
and and I have to say that I know some of the family better than I know the others, because let's face it, Mike and Pat, they've lived down in Texas for
Forever.
yeah. And I don't get down there to see them very often. I would get over and see David and Selena once in a while.
Right.
But I don't. Well, they won't let me drive alone anyway. Take a trip anymore. So, because the last trip I did was I went over to Jack and Gwen's over in Oceanside. And I drove it all by myself, straight through. I made one misturn. I got off the freeway too soon. Had to turn around, get back on. But other than that, everything went great. What the heck?
Do you still is Prescott still home to you?
I haven't been there for quite a while, but I still remember everything, and
Right.
I would love to go back.
Yeah.
I really liked it.
When's the last time you were back? Did you go back you went back for the family reunion we had there?
The 4th of July.
4th of July? Yeah. I got pictures of you.
Yeah,
You were there.
yeah.
Was that the last time you were back?
I'm trying to remember myself.
When was that, Eric? What year was that?
It was like 2005-ish.
2004 or 5,
6-ish,
yeah.
somewhere in there.
I think I've been back
Since then?
Since then, yeah.
Yeah. We just
Because I used to just take off and drive down. There was no big. Well, when Billy was just finishing high school, and he and a friend rode down with me, I got off of work at 7:00, took a couple hours nap, and drove to Prescott. Yeah. So. Yeah.
So have you always just kind of been a get up and go kind of person?
Yeah.
With a lot of energy and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Evident by the fact that she's going skydiving.
Yeah, exactly
84
right.
years old.
That's right.
That's pretty amazing, actually.
But there's been older.
Oh, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
So, kind of being someone who's been around. Okay, I got a couple questions actually, because you grew up in time frames that
we
have no clue or perspective on
ever.
So, just in kind of a quick recap, World War II, do you remember what it was like? You were young.
Yeah, very young.
Very young. So do you have were you too young to really remember anything to kind of see what?
Well, I remember my mom and grandma dressing chickens to send to the hospital every at least once a year. They'd 50 to 100 chickens, dressing them out. I can remember that, and that was and I can remember using somebody else's stamps for shoes because I went through shoes so fast.
Oh wow!
I can remember the high-topped all leather shoes I had to wear because of my feet and that kind of stuff. I can, and the war itself, we didn't have TV and that kind of stuff. So
Right.
what you knew was only what if maybe a soldier had come back or
Right.
something like that.
But did your family have any, any direct effect?
My dad didn't pass the thing. Plus, he was also a businessman. They didn't want to.
They didn't want to take.
Plus, at that time, let's see, and what did he have now? Then 5 kids at
Oh,
that
okay.
time. Yeah,
Okay,
well,
yeah.
in 40, because Jerome was born in 1939.
Right.
Yeah.
So as wars, as the Vietnam War started kicking up, were you worried? Because
My boys.
your boys were in that.
Yeah.
age
of course,
bracket.
Of course, see, Pat was in service, and so was Mike.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
And they were in the.
Well, Pat was Marine. Yeah.
Okay.
And Mike was Air Force.
Air Force.
Yeah.
That's right. I do remember
Yeah.
that. And so, but neither of them had to go to Vietnam,
No.
right?
No.
Was that ever a fear of yours?
I think it's always a fear.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, that's a dumb question.
Yeah.
A fear of yours, but I can imagine that it might have been because they were drafting people.
Yeah.
And so your kids were legitimately some of the boys were legitimately at risk of being
Well,
drafted.
didn't they get draft cards?
I don't think any of that I remember
Getting draft cards? Huh. That's interesting. So I've kind of lost my train of thought, but yeah, that's all just kind of really interesting to me, because
Well, when did the Vietnam War start?
I want to say it started in 63-ish.
Okay. Yeah,
Somewhere in there.
So at that point, my boys would have been, most of them would have been too young.
Too young. But it carried on for a while.
Yeah.
So
Because
just one of those things that's interesting.
Because Hal was born in 54, and so 20 years, that would have been
Yeah, so
74.
Right. So the Vietnam War. Oh, okay. So I was way off. The Vietnam War technically started in 55 and ended in 75.
Okay.
So
It was so they were old enough after.
after the fact, because they were still pretty young.
Yeah.
Young then as well.
Yeah.
So okay. Well, that's good. That's actually
Yeah.
good to know.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious. I always trip like when I'm watching movies and so on. I mean, obviously, 84 years you've been on this planet a long, long time, but in my opinion, I think you've lived through some of the biggest transitional periods. I mean, that's relative, I guess. 20,
Right.
30, 40, 50 years from now, we'll be saying the same probably, but just technologies, social logic,
Changes?
yeah, just how mind-blowing is it all? Just,
Well, I remember when they had dirt roads back, most of the farmers had to go through dirt roads. They
Yeah.
didn't have graveled roads.
Right.
And, the main road through St. Mary's, both ways was gravel.
Yeah.
So it has changed a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, and most of everything around there was farm country. I mean,
yeah,
Yeah.
it's Iowa.
yeah. But now it's amazing how many of those farms are not farms. We've got a lot of new. There's a lot of new vineyards. They've got wine places that make wine. In fact, we've got one that I've been to. Shortly after it opened, and it's called the two saints because it's between St. Mary's and St. Charles.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
That sounded catchy,
Clever.
actually.
Yeah.
So maybe you can clarify this for me. One of the family reunion we had up in Eden, I got summoned to someone's room, and we all took a shot of some rye whiskey that is somehow connected to our family.
Okay.
But I wasn't
That is-
clear on how
okay.
that is connected to our family.
All right. My grandfather's sister married, I think of his name. They lived in Templeton, Iowa. Oh gosh, can't remember his name. Frank? No. Oh well. Anyway, but he during the Prohibition, he made rye whiskey, and it's called Templeton Rye, and it was so good that the big guy in Chicago would come out and pick up barrels of it and take
Wow.
it back. Yeah. But it was very, very good rye whiskey.
And that's what you guys had up at Eden,
Yeah,
was that
yeah,
stuff?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, it was pretty
I
tasty.
didn't get an invite. I'm not sure why.
I don't know, man. I don't know. I guess you weren't cool enough to be
Apparently.
with all the grown-ups having a shot of whiskey. So,
Because there wasn't too much. Because Jerome and not Jerome.
this whiskey
was-
that's still in production then.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
They brought it back. It wasn't for a long time, and they brought it back.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
That's cool.
Yeah.
And it's still in that family line.
Yes. Yes.
The Templeton
yes,
Templeton Rye.
Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Eric, did you have any? I have just a couple more questions for Grandma, but I feel like I'm asking all of them. So
Go ahead.
I'm just kind of curious. What we kind of like to do on the podcast sometimes is I just like to know if you have an overall outlook on life. Has there been kind of a mantra that you always kind of follow, or is it just, I mean, you know, if it's attitude, everything? I mean, if you were to give, you know, some advice to, you know, your grandsons or your children or whatever about, you know, because everyone faces all kinds of problems. Obviously, you faced some pretty big tragedy in your life, you know, and have thrived through it all. What kind of keeps you going, and what, you know, what?
Well, for one thing, my Catholic faith does.
Right.
That's a very important part of my life.
And did you grow? And was your parents
Oh.
Catholic?
Oh yes.
Okay.
Oh yes, and grandparents and great grandparents and
So everyone.
Yeah.
Did you go to? Were you in Catholic school then?
Oh, St. Mary's didn't have a Catholic school,
Oh.
but the difference was that at that time, somebody'd come in and teach the Catholic kids in the public school, and others would teach the Protestant kids in the public school,
Oh,
and once a week. Yeah, there was no big,
Wow.
you know, they didn't fight about it.
Yeah.
Right. It's
And
just
of course, I was like probably less than half a block away from the church. So if I got sad or felt bad or something, I'd go up and the churches weren't locked at that time, and go in there and sit there, nice, quiet, and just
Yeah.
pray to Jesus. And
Yeah.
so,
So your faith has been something that's
oh yeah,
kept you
Oh,
going
yeah. Oh, yeah.
through there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're still as active with your church
Oh,
as
yes.
you've always been,
Oh yes,
as far as I know.
I'm a CCD teacher,
Which is what?
which is Catholic teaching. It's teach the kids.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's where you do when you do or you used to do a lot of blood and plasma draws for the
Oh.
church, right?
Well, it wasn't plasma draws. It
Oh.
was for the church. I worked with the Holy Cross nuns.
Okay.
And they would we would go from. We had like 7 different churches. We would go 2 times a year at least and do blood pressures and blood sugars to check to see if somebody's had trouble with their too high a blood pressure, or if they were diabetic or something. And most of these churches were in the poorer neighborhoods where the people didn't
Right.
get care. And we'd even go over to Windover and do it over at the church over there. So,
Really?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
That's sort of fun to take 2 nuns over to and then go play together.
Do you feel like you know, as you've kind of after you moved here to Utah, and you at the time Terry was here, and you brought Billy with you and whatnot, and then I think Spencer came up shortly thereafter, right? Were you quickly able to find work nursing?
Oh yeah.
Once you got here,
Yeah.
Because that's something that probably still today there's probably a demand for.
I think so too.
I'm always hearing.
Yeah, I worked the first 8 years at Jordan Valley.
Okay.
When I first went, it was Holy Cross Jordan Valley.
Okay.
It was the Catholic hospital. But they had the downtown one and then the one at Jordan Valley.
Right.
And I worked there for 8 years. And then they sold it to somebody else. And they decided that I should retire because I made 2 med-airs. Mm-hmm. Nobody died, just 2 med-airs. Mm-hmm. Well, I had just had my 64th birthday.
Oh.
Yeah. And they didn't want me to get a pension.
Right.
I guess, if you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's your business, man.
Yeah.
Because whenever it was Holy Cross, we had people that came. We had one guy that was in an accident in southern Utah, and he ended up in the ICU at Jordan Valley because that was the only place that was open to, available.
Right.
Bull.
Right.
It was because he couldn't pay anything. He didn't have. He had no money. He had nothing.
Right.
And so he was there for at least a month.
Wow. So that's really interesting. So, and you probably had a front row seat for a lot of this. For you being a nurse, would you say that working there when that hospital was? I mean, technically it was a Catholic hospital, right?
Yes,
okay,
yeah.
so when it was a Catholic hospital, would you say that's probably one of the better places you've worked?
Yes.
Because of that?
Yes.
So
because everybody, the whole thing was more coherent and everything.
Yeah. So I would imagine you've had to have seen just a lot of bureaucracy and stuff in there. Mm-hmm. How frustrated, if at all, are you with like the way that our insurance and medical systems run?
Well, let's put it this way. I just been to doctors that you go and they don't do nothing, and it's a $50 copay,
Right.
and they're collecting insurance, yes, and then you paying, and it's a constant thing.
Yeah.
I mean, and you just begin to wonder. I mean, I've been to 3 different doctors, and I've been with copays. What happened? Nothing.
Yeah, nothing. Nothing happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. I imagine that's got to be frustrating, especially when you're kind of on the inside of it.
Oh yeah.
I would imagine
yeah.
that you see a lot of stuff that isn't too
Because if I'm going to doctor, I want them to tell me what's.
Yeah.
Right.
Give me at least some idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. We put out when we said we were going to have you on, we kind of put it on Facebook and whatnot, and people asked. We asked people if they had any questions that they wanted to know, and most of our family is super lazy and didn't actually post a question at all, except for somebody wanted to know if you had a favorite kid.
You know what? No.
Okay, I would.
Whichever
Yeah,
one.
she said it was Hal earlier.
No, he was a perfect kid.
Right. I mean, that's same thing.
but he wasn't a favorite. It's which one has the biggest problem.
That's your favorite.
The one. That's the If there's somebody in trouble or something, then
That's
you step in.
Yeah. I like that. I like that a lot. The second question that we got asked, and someone not in the family but knows that you spent a lot of your life as a nurse, wanted to know your opinion, because it's obviously in the news a lot, your opinion on the legalization of medical marijuana in Utah, if you're for it or against it.
I actually am for it if it's used properly, not like they do some of the narcotics that they're using.
Right.
They just poke it at everybody because it works.
Yeah.
If it works for kids with seizures, you better. Dustin gives his one little dog has seizures.
Right.
They give her marijuana.
Not
Not marijuana. They get CBD oil.
CBD oils,
Yeah,
right?
CBD oils.
CBD oils.
Yeah. Just a
little
little
bit.
one.
And it's helped?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
I
yeah.
bet you it
Yeah.
has.
Oh yeah.
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 It's frustrating to see certain things
Yeah.
like that. It goes back to the medical thing where things that can help people, and
Yeah.
we're like, what are we doing?
Yeah,
Just
and,
help people.
Terry's husband used it because of his arthritis. He's
Yeah.
really got some really bad arthritis.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
one thing, he was born with 2 club feet and had surgery from the time he was a kid till he was, I don't know how old, and just
Yeah.
was on crutches for a long time.
Yeah.
That's kind of stuff.
As far as I'm concerned, the benefits of it for people to minimize suffering far outweighs
Yeah.
Yeah.
this other humbo jumbo crap they want to throw at us.
Well, if you know anything about marijuana, and is not the same, is not where it's the hemp that produces a CBD.
Yeah.
And way back, there was, I forget where I read it, but way back, farmers used to raise fields and fields of hemp
Oh, yeah.
because they made rope out of it. They made
Paper.
out of it.
Clothes
They
and-
made
yeah.
everything out
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah.
And yet they also used it. But then there's what is it that has, now my memory's gone, that has a nut or something that you use it's good for you. You know,
Right.
there are so many things that are natural
Yeah.
if we just use them.
Yeah.
For sure.
A lot of
Forget these-
incentive not to use them.
Yeah, forget the things that they're
Yeah.
making out of crap.
Oh yeah, and just
Billions and billions of dollars.
Yes.
and just not good for people.
Yeah.
Not in the long run.
But
Not at all.
that's primarily why a lot of some of these people are against the using the CBD.
Yeah.
Is because it works, but it's not that expensive to
Right.
Yeah,
make.
can't make no
They're
money
try-
on it.
on some level, I heard they were trying to make CBDs illegal, and it's non-psychoactive. There's nothing psychoactive. You don't get a high from it.
No.
There's nothing about it. It's
No.
the same, but it just gets lumped in that category.
Yeah. Well, because it's in
it's derived from the
it
plant.
is in marijuana.
Yeah.
There is, but it's the greatest amount. The most is in the hemp.
Yeah.
And marijuana has more of the T whatever. it is.
THC.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, that answers that question, then, which is where I thought you kind of stood with it. You guys are going skydiving in a week or two, right? That's what you're looking at.
Hopefully a week.
Hopefully
Yep.
in a week. Okay.
That's
So
the
that's going to
plan.
be a blast. Who's jumping first? You decided? You gotta let Grandma
I
go
mean,
first.
the ladies first, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that the
Okay.
rule?
That's okay.
She'll be less scared than everyone else going.
Yeah, probably.
No, Bill has jumped.
Bill's
Bill's gone before,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it should be a blast.
Oh, it will
Right?
be a blast.
Eric, come on, bro.
I'm super excited.
You're going skydiving with your grandma.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
I
Damn
don't
right I
think
am.
there's probably not a whole ton of people that can actually say that.
Nope.
That'll
Nope.
be a blast.
It's gonna be freaking rad.
Yeah.
It's gonna be so much fun.
That'll be cool. Well, Grandma, we don't want to keep you too much longer. I want to say thanks for coming up and talking to us. We could
Yes.
talk all day about everything, but so thanks for coming up. We love you. We really appreciate it. I hope you have fun on the skydive, and we'll I'm sure someone will get some pictures. So
Oh, yeah.
we have a
I
lot
hope
of
so.
the family that listens to the podcast,
Yeah.
so we'll post some pictures on our podcast webpage when we put it out. So
I'm hoping Bill or some of them bring their, because he's got some really good cameras.
Yeah.
It just,
yeah.
of course, I don't know though. His are he's got underwater cameras.
He might have something.
probably got
that'll-
some GoPros.
Good
We'll
lens
get-
in
we'll
there.
get-
One of
Oh.
these days, you're going to have to go diving.
Yeah.
You're damn right I am.
Yeah. Got a whole segment of our family that are avid divers.
I know.
man. Talking
Well,
about another fear of
I'm just a
mine.
phone call away, and I got nothing else tying me down anymore.
See, Dustin and Andy, that's where they went down to St. George and diving in the lake down there.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Dustin, get on it, dude.
Yeah. Go teach Eric how to dive, would you?
Yeah.
Get him his certification. Mm-hmm. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Grandma. Love
Thank
you.